Okay, buen día amigos y amigas, bienvenidos, bienvenidas al Rincón del Profe Jeff. We're back again for another episode in our journey through Latin America. And as you can see, sorry, getting tongue twisted. As you can see, today our episode will be about Panama. So with that, we'll turn the hat around and get going. I'm going to share the map with you as we usually do at the start. If you're listening to this, check it out when you can on our YouTube channel. I want to pull up the map because it's super important to understand where Panama is situated in the world to understand a lot of what we're going to talk about today and in other parts of class. So you can, I zoomed way out here so we can zoom in to give you perspective. We'll zoom out a little bit again. But if you focus right here in the very center of the map and zoom right in, there you'll see Panama located. It's actually considered the last country in Central America, bordering on the north with Costa Rica and on the south with Colombia. As you may already think, as soon as everybody thinks of Panama, the first thing you think is the Canal de Panama or Panama Canal, and we'll get into that in a second. There's much more to Panama than that, but because of its location, it's been important in history for a very long time, starting out with the indigenous people, because there is evidence in Panama and Costa Rica of migration and exchange, artifacts from South America, from Central America and Mexico have been found in both Costa Rica and Panama, showing that there's always been travel up and down. This is called the Isthmus of Panama, El Istmo de Panama, because of its location. And that was no different because with the arrival of Europeans and Spaniards especially, Panama was an important part of transporting goods back and forth, because we'll zoom back out, when you look, see where Spain is over here, and the Philippines, Japan, everything over here in the far east. You kind of get a sense that it took a long time to travel different places, right? So if you're leaving from Spain and you want to travel to the Pacific coast of Mexico or the Pacific coast of Chile or Peru or anything like that, you had to travel down all the way around Cape Horn or through the Straits of Magellan once they were discovered as being navigable by the larger boats, and then come around the Horn up and visit the different. That took months and months for that type of a trip to happen. And so when Spain established their empire in Latin America, it was one of the first places they visited. In fact, in history, you can read about the very first city that was established on the Pacific coast was actually in Panama. We'll take a look at that in a minute. But a lot of what had to happen traditionally with the faster route to get things back from the west coast, the Pacific coast of Latin America and Chile and Peru and Ecuador, or even up here in Mexico, was to sail the ships into Panama, either from the north or from the south, and then transport the commerce across the isthmus. This is the narrowest part, and that's where the canal actually is. So they probably went across, obviously, the narrowest part once it was figured out. And then they would load things back in the ships and then sail off back over to Europe or other places like Cuba or Puerto Rico, and then off into Spain. Okay, so obviously a central part of any kind of trade that was happening all along. So yeah, let's, since the Panama Canal is is the thing that is most renowned about Panama, we'll zoom in. I'll tell you, I've been there once. We went as part of the American Association of Teachers of Spanish and Portuguese conference. It's been about 10 years, and actually, this podcast is being recorded in 2025. We'll be going back there again this year for the same conference in Panama City. So, a little bit about the history. Panama's founded officially in 1519, and it became, it's been part of many different countries surrounding it. In 1821, like many of the other Central American countries, uh, it received its independence, gained independence from Spain, only to be swallowed up by Colombia. So Colombia was called, in Panama together were called the Gran Colombia or Greater Colombia. But then in 1903, the United States, obviously because of interests in what was going to happen soon thereafter, helped Panama gain their independence from Colombia. And then in 1904 was when the Panama Canal, uh, actually under the direction of the United States, was constructed. Because in years prior to that, and all this history you can find, and there are links included in the video description. The first folks to try and build the Panama Canal were the French, and so it was met with lots of disease. It's obviously a big undertaking, very expensive, and so that was given up. And so that was prior to 1903. And so in 1903, U.S. helped Panama gain independence from Colombia, so they're their own nation. And in 1904, the canal is built. Now it takes 10 years to build it. So in 1914, it was officially finished. And actually, the first time I was able to visit, or we were able to visit, was in 2014. So it was they were celebrating the 100-year anniversary of the canal. So when you look at Panama, you'll see that the country kind of makes a fun turn. Looks like almost an S, not quite as curvy enough, but it's kind of laying on its side there. So when you think of north and south, this is typically our direct, but so Panama runs kind of east-west. So actually the canal is almost running north and south, whereas if you're going across Costa Rica, or Nicaragua, you're gonna go east-west. So in Panama with the canal, you're running north-south. So just zoom in here real quick, and there are links in the video description. We're going to show you a ship going through the Panama Canal, time lapse, because it takes about 8 hours. But when you think about that, that's super short compared to the months that it took to go around the Horn, as we showed you there. The Panama Canal functions on what are called locks in English, in Espanol, esclusas. And there are a couple of set of locks, some on the Caribbean side over here, or Atlantic, and some over here on the Pacific side. These are called the Miraflores, and I can't remember the name right now. Gatun, I believe, are the ones that it's called on that side. So here's what it looks like for a ship to come through the canal. So a ship coming on the Pacific side enters here, travels through the locks, and the locks are simply stairways run by water that help raise the ship up, and then it sails through this canal right here into this lake called Lago Gatun, and that's a man-made lake made to supply water for the canal to function. Then it would come over here and then lower down through the locks, Las Esclusas, and then sail out into the Caribbean. So like I said, it takes about 8 hours for that process to take place in general. And there are ships traveling in both directions. So ships can go east, north, south, whichever they are. I remember when we were in Panama City, you could see all the ships out here in the Bahia de Panama, the Panama Bay, waiting their turn to come through the Canal de Panama. So obviously that's a very important part. We'll talk little bit about that. Now let's just go into the history of that. So it was built by the United States from 1904 to 1914 and was under the control of the United States until the last day of December in 1999, because in 1977, 78, there was a treaty made between the United States. It's called the Torrijos-Carter Treaty, or Carter-Torrijos, depends on which country you're from. And it was agreed in that treaty that the complete control of the Panama Canal and the Canal Zone, and when we refer to the Canal Zone, it's the land on both sides of the canal all the way through from one side of the country to the other. So, and if you're interested in that history, you know, we could do a whole podcast or a whole course just on that because of the things that have happened with the Canal de Panama. Okay, so since the year 2000, it's been under the control of Panama. And one of the things important, it's an important economic boost to Panama, of course, because in order for a ship to transport through the canal, they need to pay a fee, and that fee is based on the size and the weight, what the ships are carrying, and the ships have to pay for that before they actually transmit. It's not okay, we'll do that and then pay later. And so one thing we're going to see when we visit the Panama City, actually we'll jump into that right now. Well, let's go to the Panama Canal. There's a picture of the canal. This is the locks at Miraflores, and you can see this would be one lane, and this would be another lane. Ships going through up and down, and you can see the doors of the locks, and you'll see how it works in the video that you can check out below. But here's a picture of modern day Panama, and one of the things that's impressed me when we were just driving through town getting to the hotel that the conference was at was the fact that there seemed to be a lot of banks in Panama. And it turns out that a lot of these shipping companies, to make the transactions easier, because they need to pay, you know, up front as they're preparing to go through the canal. And if someone knows a little bit more about that than me, feel free to share in the comments what you know, but this is what I found out while I was there. And so these banks are built by these shipping companies so they can pay more quickly. You know, they don't have to wire it from a foreign bank into here and then pay the canal authority in order to have the ship go through. It just makes it a lot smoother. So there are banks all over the place, and that's what they were. So it's a huge economic center for trade, you know, world trade, because you can see banks from companies all over the world. So very impressive. There seemed to be a lot of construction ongoing all the time. But one of my favorite parts of the city, and as we talked about, Panama City was one of the first ones on the Pacific coast back in colonial times. This is a shot of what they call the Casco Antiguo, the old town part. You can see the modern city back in the background here. But down here, you can walk the streets, and it will feel like you're taken back in history. And you can see the old cathedral and the main plaza, all kinds of cool places to hang out and just feel and see the history from Panama. Okay, it's important, as we always remember the indigenous peoples of all the places that we visited, and as I mentioned at the start, that there was a lot of commerce and trade between the indigenous people from South America, Central, and up into Mexico. So the most known group of indigenous people are called the Kuna, or Guna with the G. Here's a picture of a lady in her traditional dress. The art is called Mola. We'll see it in a minute. They are located, the traditional lands where they occupy now, back to the map, zoom out a bit, are in the Islas de San Blas. We have to zoom in here. It's over here in the Caribbean. And you can see there's all kinds of islands. According to the facts, which I was looking up, there are about 300, 200 to 300 islands. I know that's a big number, but as you zoom in, you can see more and more small ones. But those are the islands that they inhabit now, maintaining their traditional practices. And of course, they produce a lot of this art. Here's a picture of a Kuna woman with her Mola art in Panama City. Very intricate, very impressive. I didn't get to appreciate that much when I was there because it was such a short visit, but as I've studied afterwards, something I want to definitely check out. So to kind of give you a look of what the San Blas Islands look at, these would be traditional houses. You can visit there as a tourist if you'd like to go. Obviously, it's in the Caribbean, so you're going to have some great weather and crystal clear waters to feel or to swim in there. Okay, that wasn't what I wanted to go to. Sorry. One of the other artifacts that Panama is known for, these are called Polleras, and Pollera or Pollera, depending on where you're from, are the word pollera is for skirt or a dress, and these are the polleras panameñas, very beautifully done, that the ladies traditionally wear during festivals. And one of the most famous festivals that they have is the Carnavales de las Tablas. And as we've talked about in many countries in Central and South America, Carnaval, which usually takes place in February and March, is a big celebration. And it's exactly that in Panama as well. So I've included some videos on the Carnavales de las Tablas in Panama. Let me jump back as we were talking about, sorry for the scatterbrainness, we'll just jump out of the screen and talk for a minute. One of the things that impressed me the most about Panama is the diversity of cultures which exist there. When you look at where it's at in the world, you can understand that many people have traveled through or been brought there also. Of course, the slave trade was a huge part of the Spanish Empire, and so there is a big Afro-Panameño influence. One of the things that struck me is we took a tour out to the Canal de Panama, but on the way we stopped at a monument that was erected, and it had Chinese inscriptions on it because as well, like many of the countries in Latin America, there are important Chinese colonies. So there's a Barrio Chino, Chinatown in Panama City. There's a Barrio Chino in Costa Rica, a Barrio Chino, a Chinatown in Buenos Aires. So all of these big cities have the Asian influence as well. So as you can see by the place that it's at, there's going to be a lot of diversity. So that'd be an interesting thing for you to check out. All right. Well, let's the national dish. Let's go into the food part since we're talking about those things. Is called the Sancocho, and there's a recipe in the video description. It's a chicken soup, and you can see it looks kind of like a stew with pieces of corn. It's actually kind of there are other countries that have it as well. Okay. Let me just make sure I've covered all of the places and things I've wanted to. We talked about, when we talk about language, of course, Spanish is considered I didn't share that picture with you, sorry. Here I was talking about the food and you didn't get to see it. So there we go. El Sancocho. Yeah, we covered the dresses and now we're on to the food. So that's a picture of Sancocho again. There'll be some references in the video description. Uh, Back to language. The official language is Spanish, but of course, because of the existence of the indigenous people there, the the indigenous dialects are also in those regions. A couple other places to visit that I've heard about. So there were the San Blas Islands, Panama City, of course. Up in the north here, there's a place called Bocas del Toro. Those are famous for expats, people from outside of Panama like to come and visit there. Of course, there's connection across the ground here through Costa Rica. You'll see this highway number 1. That's called the Carretera Panamericana, the Pan American Highway, which runs all the way from Alaska to the southern tip of Argentina and comes through, and there is only one break in the whole road, and that happens in Panama because of this area here called the the Darien National Park. It's just very tough to get through there, and you may have seen pictures recently of since immigrants are coming in from Venezuela through Colombia and into Panama, other places, that they actually do that on foot through there, and it's very treacherous and dangerous. So people that are traveling on the Carretera Panamericana, the Pan American Highway, frequently take a boat or something around on either side to, because there's really not a road that goes through that. So pretty remote place. All right. Well, let's talk about some famous people from Panama. The first one, and you can look up some. There a huge number. Well, not a huge number, but several baseballistas, but some baseball players that are from there. That, like many other countries in Central America, is one of the top sports, maybe more important than football, soccer, would be baseball. Some names you might know from baseball, if you're a baseball fan, are Mariano Rivera, he's in the Hall of Fame, played for the Yankees for many years, and also Rod Carew, who I remember growing up, he played for the Minnesota Twins and later the California Angels, and he's also a member of the Hall of Fame. Okay. One that we'll talk about, which I inadvertently showed you, is I just pulled up a bunch here in the Google search because none of them really stood out or were very clear. The person you see on your screen is Omar Torrijos, who was we'll call him a dictator. Many people choose not to, but he was a politician and a dictator. He was the head of the army and led a coup to take over power in Panama and ruled for many years. You'll see there in one of those pictures that he was the one who signed the treaty with President Carter to have the control of Panama go back, or the Panama Canal go from the United States to Panama. So I'll include some information there in the video description so you can check out his legacy there. And as we've talked about with many dictators, you need to decide the perspective that you're going to take, and that's why perspective and culture is such an important subject, as to whether it was good or bad, the things that he were done that he did, and that's again a decision that you need to make. One of the most famous Panameños that I know of and remember is, his name is Rubén Blades, Rubén Blades, or Rubén Blades, as some people call him here in the United States. He's an actor and a singer. Started out as a musician and became an actor. he also ran for the presidency of Panama, and didn't actually win, from my recollection. But he's one of the most. He did work for the Ministry of Tourism in Panama. But he's got some really good salsa music. That's obviously, I'm going to jump out of the pictures here for a minute. Good salsa music, and that's what he was known for when I started learning Spanish back in the late 80s and early 90s. He actually has some connection with New Mexico for us who are here in New Mexico, because he played a main part in a movie called The Milagro Beanfield War. It's a movie that won many awards. So check that out on your streaming services. Again, it's called The Milagro Beanfield War, that has to do with something that happened in northern New Mexico, all dealing with water rights. So you might want to check that out. So check his music out. Check that movie out. Check some other people out. You can, do your own Googling and finding out things on Panama. But the one thing that I took away from Panama is that, and I've known not a whole lot of people from Panama. The first person I remember meeting from Panama was when I worked in Alaska. He was another crew member on the fishing boat that I worked from. So very sweet and open people, very positive, and as we like to say in Espanol, super tranquilos, very calm and just easy going. And the thing that I took away with my visit there, and hope to explore more when I go back this year, is to see the diversity that exists there, and just the happiness that the people exude in spite of some of the harsh circumstances that many of them live in. Okay? Because even though it is economically a wealthy place, again, a lot of the wealth in these places doesn't trickle down into all levels of society. Okay, well, that's all I've got for today. We'll do our traditional sign off with a quote from one of the authors, Literatura Panameña. The name of this author is Rogelio Sinan, and he's considered one of the most important authors in the 20th century. This is a phrase from one of his poems. It says, La patria es un poema que escribimos con la memoria, con el alma y con los sueños. So la patria, that's many people translate it as patrimony, but I translate it as my home country, my home town, or where we're from. So where we're from is a poem that we write with our memories, with our soul, and with our dreams. Okay? So when he's talking about that, it's saying, well, Panama is made up of our memories, our soul, and our dreams. And that's what it can be for all of us. So, well, I hope you enjoyed that episode, and invite you to explore Panama, and try some of the things out that we have in the video description. So that'll be it for now. Muchas gracias y adios.